welcome back. And as we've seen with our colleague Nermeen Abdulrahman, that was the celebration of the International Children's Day, and we're still talking about the importance of our youth and of course their education, technology and more with Dr. Nabil Gad, the professor of education as well as the educational consultant. And Ahmed, you were talking to the doctor before I interrupted the interview.
Yes, Dr. Nabil, we were speaking more about the reliance of the children on technology. How do you see it nowadays?
Could you repeat it again, please?
The reliance of the children nowadays on technology. How do you see it from the from the point of view of teachers and parents?
Yes, this is. I mean, the technology is part and parcel of the teaching or the learning process nowadays. We should not frustrate them. We have to encourage them and be working only as troubleshooters. If there is something technical that they cannot deal with, we can interfere immediately to let them go and encourage their enthusiasm of such a technique. They can learn more, as I mentioned earlier, by a touch of a button. They can have the whole world in front of them. That increase and this self-learning makes them self-motivated and be advanced to the future, because this future is still unknown. However, they can shape it with their ideas, with their plans, with their thinking, with the theories they learned from, with avoiding the mistakes they committed. And such a thing is a new technology that to be applied. Technology itself means the science of application, of the professional application of things. And errors can be avoided, as I said, and repaired and to be refixed for the better. Maybe a glimpse of a second can give this learner a new idea that can work and be successful as much as possible.
Yes.
Doctor, you were talking to us before the break about the importance of the role of the various entities and government organizations. Well, I'd like first to start by the role of the Ministry of Social Solidarity when it comes to needy children or even single mothers. We have so many issues that are related to children when it comes to the role of the Ministry of Social Solidarity. So how do you see that?
I think in the House of Representatives, as it's newly named, or the Parliament in general, they have specialized committees whose members are having this as a major issue in front of them to be discussing and modifying some rules. And of course it is for the welfare of mothers, single mothers. That's a good point that you have mentioned, and children. Especially what moves me a lot and makes me absolutely affected by are the homeless children. What some people used to say in the past, they are the street children. No, maybe, who knows, one of these children who are homeless may be genius, maybe a famous guitarist, maybe a famous musician, maybe a writer, maybe an actor, maybe a scientist. If he or she, this homeless child, is given the care which is enough to develop his capabilities, and it's the responsibility of the legislation of the laws that could be for the benefit of such children and single mothers. I'm happy with this word, single mother. I heard it abroad in the US. Maybe the or divorced or whatever the case is, but they are human beings. And after all, we have to have in front of us the idea of hope. We have faith in the Lord, we have hope, and we have to have charity. There are so many charitable people one of the celebrities of the announcers in some of the private channels is having a campaign for getting blankets, wooden blankets for those, and he said the name of the campaign is the warm Egypt, or the warmth given to Egyptians. It's good. So such charitable projects are good, and the legislations through the People's Assembly.
Yes, Dr. Nabil, speaking about the legislations, how do you think this can happen through the House of Representatives here in Egypt, and when it can happen to be taking care or more care of the homeless children and the divorced mothers here in Egypt?
It can happen, believe it or not, when there is a will to develop. And it's well known that when there is a will, there is a way. So if these people have the will, and of course someone will come and say, what about the fund to be given for this? I think that charitable people are so generous, and they can easily give a hand to such things, because it is to be taken for granted later on in heaven, not on earth.
Dr. Nabil, we're still continuing with you, but as we're celebrating Child's Day, we will be looking at first a music concert by Nisma Abdelaziz, and we will look into a beautiful song as well. And then we'll come back to continue our talk with Dr. Nabil Gad.
Sure.
back. You're still watching Nile Cruise on Nile TV, and of course we will be continuing the interview with Dr. Nabil Gad, the professor at the Faculty of Education and the educational consultant.
Yes, indeed. Doctor, we were talking about children, we were talking about education, we were talking about the laws, motherhood, we were talking about the family in general and the environment a child should be raised in. And I'd like your advice as an educational consultant. Now in Egypt we have so many educational systems. We have the government system, we have Canadian, British, American, even we have Chinese, Japanese, so many systems. How do we choose the proper and right system for our child? And which is the best in terms of Egypt?
I'm afraid to say the choice depends on the financial status of the parents.
Yes.
Those who are able can, of course, send their kids to the foreign education.
Yes.
Those who are of the middle class or the lower upper middle class, send them to the government schools. However, I think there are some kinds of government schools which are called the experimental schools. They are a very good type of schools, and I think they suit the income of such low middle class or even the middle class families. It's after all, it depends after all on the encouragement of the parents themselves, how they are convinced of what their kids have. There should be something very essential nowadays in education, and this is the relation between the school and home. The teacher-parent association, which actually is not quite activated nowadays. If there is a very good link between these two ends of the educational problem, I think the results will be better. But usually parents, whether fathers or mothers, are terribly busy up to their ears in the life concerns. But if they give such due care, as I always say this, to their parents, to their offsprings or children, that could be far much better for the future of these children. If there is something wrong, if they are at the beginning, at an earlier stage, they can easily reform it and repair it. But if it is too late, I'm afraid it becomes harder and more difficult. The earlier, the better.
Yes.
And the link is quite important nowadays. And as I mentioned, the financial status of the parents is what
now,
counts.
if I have money and I have the Canadian, British, American, which is better in a sense?
I can't say such system is better than the other, because maybe everything, as it is usual in life, has its merits and demerits. So we have to balance. And we ask those who have let their children join such a kind of education, and those who have joined another kind of education, and we take the decision. The poor, or not the poor, I mean the innocent children, are just led by what their parents do. They have to keep an eye on their behavior, keep an eye on their mates, because the classmates or the club mates or roommates or whoever they are very important.
Yes, Dr. Nabil Gad, the professor at the Faculty of Education and the educational consultant. Thank you very much for being with us today on Nile Cruise.
It was my pleasure.
Thank
May I end saying something
Yes, please, Doctor.
about what counts to us is not the ends that we reach. I mean, what counts to us is the ends what we reach, not the allays that we drift into before coming to the end.
Well, yes, indeed, Doctor. Thank you very much, Dr. Nabil Gad, the educational consultant, for this interesting and wonderful interview. And now we will be looking into our own artistic segment with our own reporter, Basma Taha.